What's up, Chris? It's Tuesday.
What what is going on, Jay? Happy Tuesday to you, and happy Tuesday to everyone out there. No time for talk today. We're gonna get right to it because there's so much news. Welcome everyone to the Practice Playbook, the show where we help firm owners and wannabe firm owners navigate the road for their modern firms. I am Chris Gino. He is Jay Kimmelman, and we are the hosts of your show. Last week, we talked about several of our favorite tech and automation tools. We mentioned why they're helpful in communicating with clients and also with your teams. We mentioned about how they can coordinate with document collection and help with project management more broadly. Today, we're going to just kind of talk a little bit more about what we do advisory work. Right? We'll summarize what being an advisor means and how that might differ between different people. We'll talk about why that can be scary to take on, why advisory work can potentially be something that you can be scared of, and then also we'll spotlight some of the tasks that you might already be particularly qualified to advise on right now. But before we do that, like I said, let's get to the news. We had a lot of it. Some of it, we'll see if it's big news or if it's minuscule news. But Accounting Today, they must have hired a couple new people because they were banging out articles. There's lots and lots and lots of accounting related news. One of those articles talked about recent e-filing issues as a summary. And there were as many as, like, I think if I did the math here, it's like 10 million, maybe 11 million e-filing summary issues from last year. The biggest problems there were your PIN or your AGI didn't match. There were 3 millions of those problems. 3 million e-files were missing Form 8962. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know what that means, Jay. So is 8962 like a really important form? How easy is it to miss this?
It's an important form if you're getting a subsidy on your medical insurance, and yeah, they will get a letter on that. That's usually the first thing that'll get kicked back. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
important.
3 million problems there. We also had 2 million invalid tins and 2 million separate tins already used. So that seems like a big time problem. You like
Oh yeah,
blew it on your own social, or
the
somebody used yours already.
yeah, that's the biggest issue is that fraud right there.
Yeah. And then finally, there were 1 million issues of names that don't match the database. So lots of problems. So the reason that I brought this up today was obviously if you're going to be e-filing for your clients, these are things to watch out for and things to be aware of. Obviously, these things are problems. If you've been e-filing several times, I'm sure you're very familiar with these issues, but just continue to monitor those. There have been loads of executive orders that have had a wide variety of different impacts across both the accounting space and otherwise. So recently, the people at Deloitte, they've asked their government consultants to update their emails. Right now, their emails had historically included some pronouns, and they've said, you guys got to get done with that to comply with these executive orders. So yeah, great. Ooh, good to see you. Good to see you.
It's important
I
stuff, man.
also, yeah, really, really providing value there. Um, the we talked last week about how DEI got expunged from a whole bunch of records, and Jay, I mentioned to you separately that there was a silly story where because of that, the word inclusion, that word when you start to take that word out of tax related documents, you start to take out areas where you're supposed to include your TIN on the tax form. So maybe these folks that have an invalid or already used TIN, maybe that won't matter anymore because you don't have to include it because we took the word inclusion out,
There you go. Look,
um,
making it more efficient.
making it more efficient. Lots more e-filing, non-issues. Let's go. But one other thing that this has also done, right, and all of this activity has done, is made government consultants under the microscope. And so I read a story about how the cost cutters, all of the Doge Bros or whatever they're being called, right? They they are looking at like contracts with Deloitte, with FEMA, and those types of things. And so that is a thing that I think we probably haven't talked about here. But if you are doing contracting work for the government in any kind of capacity, now you have to be on the lookout for what that means for you and your firm. So know that that could potentially be an issue if that's a thing that your firm does.
You know, I find it interesting. As somebody that does some of that consulting work, you just don't go in and cut. You go in, you observe, you see what's
Yeah,
going on, you get a feel for the operation, you find out
right,
where it's where the fat is, and then you cut the fat
right.
and you make it more efficient. You don't just gut it,
Yeah,
because ultimately what's going to happen is 2 or 3 years from now, we're going to be spending 3 or 4 times as much to put all this back together, because we're going to
yeah,
realize, oh wait, we forgot something here.
right. That is a concern that a
Yeah,
lot of folks like you and me, and probably these Deloitte consultants that are under the microscope, they're probably thinking about as well.
for sure.
But no certainty as to what's happening there. There is some certainty in the tariff space. Aluminum and steel, they're getting tariffed a little bit higher, 25% tariffs announced on those. Again, that doesn't really impact accountants directly, but if you are providing advice to entities that are importing aluminum and steel, you need to know that that's happening, and you also need to know how that can impact them. So be aware that that's happening. Jay, obviously the Doge Bros, they were hanging out in the Department of Treasury, I think, over the past week or two. How do we feel about this, and how does this impact our clients? Like, is this a thing that we need to be worried about in any kind of way, or just let it run its course and worry about it later?
Well, giving people access to systems, whether read only or not, they're getting access to important information like your social security number, your daughter's social
Yeah,
security number. I'm assuming that information is encrypted in their database, but I don't know that. I mean, I
no,
don't know when this system was built. I would hope it's encrypted, but if they got access to it, did they get encryption keys that they can, change that? You know,
yeah,
from my perspective, I don't think they're looking for the data in the payment systems. I
right,
think, and it was announced last week, that Elon had launched XPay. So my thought is he wants to take the payments that are going through the treasury system and run them through his own pay rails so he can get the fees off of those transactions. That's
yeah.
that's my thought there. I don't see that big of a deal about them having access to it, but I don't think that anybody without security clearance should be going in and looking at those systems.
Right. No, you would certainly hope not. And so there's still some stuff happening in the works to try to make that limit or to limit that a little bit. So we will see how that eventually shakes out. Because who really knows? Who even really knows what was happening? So hopefully good solutions are eventually found.
Yes.
Um, Jay, did you know that that the ERC is still around?
Of course it
There's
is.
there's there's still a million unprocessed claims. So many, which seems crazy that we're still this far out and there's still claims outstanding. So
Yeah.
um, know that I guess the IRS is still working on those. So be aware of that. And if your client has any of these, if your clients have any of these outstanding claims, know that um, that they're there. They haven't gone forgone or whatever or disappeared. So know that that's still happening. In a little bit more relevant news, Jay, I think there was a little bit more clarity, I think, that came out recently about some of the administration's proposed tax breaks and tax issues. And so I wanted to get your thoughts. Carried interest that came up as a thing that might get thrown out, as well as some tax breaks for sports team owners, which here in the Dallas area, I'm a big fan of getting rid of those. Like
Yeah.
come on now. And then I think there was also some talk about the expansion of the salt deduction. So Jay, I'd love to get um, your thoughts on how these impact accounting firm advisors, how these impact our clients, which one of these matter, or whether they matter at all.
So I'm not going to talk about carried interest because I am not an expert on that.
Okay.
So, but likely salt breaks. I mean, I think that would be beneficial, especially to those states like New York, California, that their property taxes are so large. Um, yeah, and that's been you know pretty much on the docket for almost 8 years since TCGA was passed in 2017. So
Right.
that is highly anticipated. As far as eliminating the tax cuts for the sports teams, what are there? 100 of them? I mean, come on, it's
Yeah.
okay.
100
Eliminate the
owners
tax
probably. They
breaks.
all own a few teams anyway, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
um,
I
just
mean,
all across and
yeah.
together.
I mean, honestly, I don't know what the impact of that is, but I did see if they were to put a 2% tax on people. What was the number that they were making? Oh, I don't remember what that story said,
Yeah.
but it was a 2% tax on like the 1%. It would eliminate our
uh,
deficit.
yeah.
So I mean,
You
just
know,
yeah,
yeah. Who knows? Jay, I know you said you're not an expert. I don't even know that I know what carried interest is, which is kind of embarrassing. Could you like, is it, who does it impact? Partnerships and stuff? That's kind of what I read in the article, is it seems like it's focused typically on partnerships. Is that wrong?
it's on private equity funds.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, and the reason I didn't read it is because the story is gatekeeped.
Oh, no.
Yes, so
Sorry.
I couldn't read it. So it's all good. But yeah, that's I don't do taxes on PE funds, so I don't
Yeah,
you know,
totally understand. Makes
check on
sense.
that
No
stuff.
worries. No worries. We have talked on this show in the past about the new 1099 DA for digital assets. Those deregulated or decentralized finance companies got a little bit of reprieve over the past week. And there's now a 2-year reporting delay related to those 1099 DAs, so that they can get all of that figured out, I guess. So if you have clients that have digital assets, we had talked about how you could potentially be getting a 1099 DA. Now that reporting period is pushed out a little bit. Now, obviously, if you have clients that are holding or trading or moving around with these digital assets, you still have to consider the tax implications of them. Just because there's not a form associated with it doesn't mean that there's not tax associated with it. Um, and so you'll want to continue to monitor that, but just know you're not going to see a 1099 DA for a little bit at least. Um, Jay, I thought this probably belonged in the executive order area, but the IRS, right? We talked last week about how there was a more broad government order of, if you want to, you can buy your contract out, and you can get out of here if you don't want to come back to the office. The IRS people were told, actually, just kidding, you have to stay till May 15th. So the employees who agreed to the buyout offer still were asked to, or have been told to stay through the 15th. So that actually, I know that kind of seems ridiculous, but that actually seems like good news, because that does mean that there will be a few more agents there to answer phones.
Yeah.
Jay, what do you think about that?
No, I think that's right. Get it through the tax deadline. Get them into the summer. Hey, I mean, would you rather have the end of winter and early spring off, or would you rather have summer off? Hey,
Yeah,
I'd love to quit in May and get paid for I don't know what the deal is. What 12 years?
yeah, right,
But and all serious aside, but I mean, joking aside, but and take off a little bit during the summer, go travel, do something, and line up
right.
that new work and start, after July 4th. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that wouldn't be too bad, right? Not too bad at all. Um, One final piece of tax related news, I saw that there were 9 states that are changing their tax rates. And I was actually kind of surprised because every single one of them, the tax rate went down. So I thought that was an interesting thing in all 9 of these states, that with the tax rate changes, they all are decreasing. Um, and yeah, that's at least a little bit interesting, but it's something to obviously be aware of if you have multi-state filers. Know that those things are changing. I'm sure, Jay, you can correct me if this is the wrong assumption, but I'm sure that the forms that you need to file with the state will be updated with those rates right in them, I'm sure. And
Yeah.
any tax software worth like a anything will have those updates reflected as well. does this move the needle at all, or tax rate changes anything that matter at all?
I mean, looking at it, one was 0.05%. I mean, there was such a small change, and odds are they probably increased somewhere else that is not as transparent. So, yeah, one way or another, the government's going to get their money so that they can pay their bills in their states.
Right.
So,
Yeah, maybe everybody's trying to downsize, Jay. You just
maybe,
don't need as much money. Who knows?
maybe.
Um, well, I guess we'll find out there. In other accounting news, the acquisition in financing corner was pretty quiet this week. Although GBO did acquire Talent Crowd. Talent Crowd is a business technology firm, and so I thought that was an interesting merger because as we think about the future of where both the environment more broadly goes, and then um, also the tech focus that we'll have going forward, like these business technology companies, IT infrastructure, IT outsourcing, IT support, they are going to be really important. And so I thought GBO probably did a pretty good solid here by acquiring a company that was in that business technology space. I know sometimes people want to build out a team like that from internal, but if you don't already have them and you have some funds, an acquisition is a good way to go. But it's just a reminder again that there are lots of opportunities for things that you can advise on and provide assistance for that are outside just tax return compliance uh, and basic bookkeeping or audit work, compliance work. So um, I thought that was interesting. Jay, any thoughts on this little acquisition?
No, but I think it's really important for the industry. I mean,
Yeah, right.
yeah.
Yeah, the PCAOB they missed the news last week, but they're back. They sanctioned someone for altering work papers, which really is just not that big of a news. Don't do that. Good job by the PCAOB for catching these people, and we'll move on. But the PCAOB also made some other news by some concerns around whether they'll even continue to exist. Um, there's been a lot of talk historically about whether the PCAOB should just roll back up into the SEC and be a interior enforcement arm of the SEC. I think that there's value in that being an independent party, but I don't know that we're going to see that happen. And the AICPA is preparing for the possibility that the PCAOB will be folded back into the SEC. So I think that's something that is probably very likely, especially as we consider all the stuff that we've seen happening. Um, Jay, do you have any thoughts on whether the PCAOB should be a thing on its own, or whether it matters whether it's rolled up into the SEC?
I truly think it should stay independent. I mean,
Yeah,
it, it just needs to be to do what it's going to do. But
yeah.
at this point in the game, everything's fair, so we shall see.
Right. Well, I think is if they're continuing to do the same type of work and they're
Yeah,
just bannered as the SEC instead, like
yeah,
that's maybe not as big of a problem because the SEC is obviously regulating companies on its own. Like it's not these companies. So,
right.
um, like I think that the SEC itself is kind of independent of that. But you like for there to be some accountability directly and have the and feel like you have like an actual stick, which maybe the SEC does too. But we'll see. Um, we'll see. Definitely. I don't know uh, how big of a deal that is,
I mean, they
but we'll
both
continue to monitor it.
can find the companies, so I mean that's where the biggest impact is to the companies anyway. So, I
Yep.
mean, does it truly matter?
Yeah, probably not,
But
but maybe. And so
yeah, exactly.
that's the thing that we'll continue to
Yep.
watch out for sure. Um, Barry over at the AACPA, he couldn't stay away. He's also back. He went over to Baker Tilly to be an advisor, a non executive director. I mean, I guess that's good for Barry, right? Get that final paycheck or whatnot. But I think if I'm ready to retire, I'm just gonna want to like retire. But maybe you needed a little extra cash for the lifestyle or something. I'm not sure. Any like Jay, when you get to retiring, you gonna hop back in somewhere else like a couple weeks later, or are you just out the door?
It depends. I mean, unless I can get a gig with NASCAR, I might just go out the door.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
that feels right to
Yeah.
me. Um, I in an extra article here, this one's actually two separate stories that happened this week. In the first one, I got caught by the headline because I was super excited because the headline, the title of the article was "Increasing Student Interest in Accounting," right? And I was like, "Oh, great! Student interest in accounting is increasing." But that was not what this article was about at all. It was about things that you can do to increase student interest in accounting. Um, which there are lots of different things that can be done to shore up that pipeline. In a second article, however, accounting undergraduate enrollment has increased by 12% over the past year or a couple years, I believe. So that is actually exciting news. So whatever the person in the first article talked about, it sounds like they actually executed them in the second article. Obviously, I think Jay, you and I will agree. Like we do want to make sure that the accounting pipeline continues to be robust.
For sure.
One of the things that this article talked about too is kind of like what GBO is considering in their acquisition is some of the applications of technology and IT infrastructure and how those can impact and correlate with accounting as well, and how it's important for all of those things to work together. Where you start to change the complexion a little bit of what that historical accounting student looks like by giving them more of this technology base as well. So I did. I think there's obviously lots of things that we can do and lots of things that we should do in order to continue to grow the profession. So I'm sure we'll see articles like this continuing to come out.
I'm just
Jay, any extra thoughts on that?
I'm just shocked there's a clickbait article in an accounting journal.
I I don't think it was. I don't think now in retrospect it wasn't clickbait. I just read it that way. Increasing
Okay.
student interest in
Yeah.
accounting is exactly what the article was about. Like that, it
Yeah.
wasn't misleading. It was true, but it was just I I had just interpreted it improperly,
Yeah.
which is pretty funny though.
No, it's all
Um,
good.
Jay, I need some personal insight in the last bit of the accounting related news.
Hmm.
Is your state, are they changing the CPA licensing rules? I heard that they were.
I couldn't tell you. If it's
Mm,
not in the governor's best interest, we don't do anything in the state. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. We have
mm,
special sessions to help us with certain things, and it actually hurts. So, I would not put my
yeah.
money on our legislature doing anything beneficial for the people of Florida. Sorry.
So they're moving it up to 180 hours is what you're saying? Maybe something like
You
that.
know what?
210.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. I think it's just another state that is considering reducing that 150-hour rule.
Yeah.
So
I was very tempted to reach out to my brother who's connected with the FICPA chair and ask about
oh, okay.
that. And I just didn't have enough time after seeing that to do that.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah.
So maybe we will report back next week
Yeah.
with what's happening and changing in Florida.
Yeah.
And that was all for the accounting news, Jay. Finally, there is a little bit of tech news. The Workday, which is a tool that accountants have use a lot. I don't think we talked about it last week, but we easily could have. Um, we've mentioned on this show and on other shows how AI agents are just here to stay and continue to be robust. Workday has rolled out a tool to help manage those AI agents. So good job by Workday for recognizing that this is a trend that's going to continue and for trying to do something about it. So you love to see that. Thomson Reuters they have launched a $150 million fund for accounting and tax tech. So they're looking to acquire kind of startup stage accounting support tools, trying to build out their platform there. So that is definitely great to see. A big investment in those types of entities will continue to bring to the forefront the best and the brightest, I hope, or at least I expect. So looking forward to seeing what they do there with their new research fund. Tax GPT, Jay, have you heard of Tax GPT?
I have. Yeah.
Yeah, they raised $4.6 million. And if I don't know a whole lot about Tax GPT, but I'm assuming that it is Chat GPT related to tax. because of its name.
Yep.
Great. So they got 4.6 million to continue doing some extra engineering there and make that product even better. And so Jay, have you used Tax GPT or you just seen it?
I've just seen it. I have not used it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm going to now. I want to check it out and see what it actually can do.
Yeah, there you go. And so I mean, we talk about it here a lot, right? Anything that you can utilize to make your job easier is a good tool.
Most
And
definitely.
Tax GPT is almost certain to be that if it's allowing you to do research more effectively, to learn about carried interest without having to dig up 3 white papers or whatnot. Like that's a really good tool.
Most
Absolutely.
definitely.
And then finally, Jay, NetSuite, they have migrated to an AI self-maintaining database. So this is an Oracle-based database that's supposed to use AI to fix its own bugs and run its own backups and do all kinds of things so that it just maintains itself using AI. That sounds really fancy. I didn't realize we were quite there. Jay, do we care about this that much, or is this just something that we're gonna feel comfortable with?
I mean, if it is going to keep disk drives and NASs up longer, I think we do care about it
Yeah.
because, like, I have my NAS back there. I can't see it, but I've replaced 4 drives in that thing in the last 8 years, and
Yeah.
luckily it's set up on RAID, so pop it out, put a new one in, it's fine. But if both the
Yeah.
drives go, you're going to lose it all. So if you have AI
Yeah.
maintaining it, it's looking for anomalies. That's going to be great. It's going to fix it and keep it running, and probably, hopefully, give you alerts well in advance of it actually failing. So
Right.
yeah, that's awesome. Can't wait to see more of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that was an Oracle tool that NetSuite's using. So um, that tool I think is available for other people too. So Um, I'm sure if it's an Oracle tool, though, it's probably not for a small accounting firm, but you never know, I guess. Maybe they're looking for beta users or something. Who
There you
knows?
go. Yeah.
Jay, did I
So yeah,
miss any tech news or accounting news or otherwise? It was a very busy news week.
the only thing I can think of in the tech world is Elon offered to buy a controlling interest in OpenAI for 100 million, 100 billion.
Mm, mm,
Whatever it was, they laughed at him and said bye bye. So,
yeah,
yeah, so they want to keep it in its integrous form and keep its integrity.
well that is good, I think. um,
There's no
I don't
love
know.
lost between Elon and Sam Altman. Let's just say that.
No, that's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's probably like, yeah, whatever. Yep. Wonderful. Wonderful. So then on to our main topic today. Firms like ours, firms like yours, they are always looking to grow. And one of the easiest and biggest areas where that's continuing to happen is in advisory. Firms see these areas of potential growth. Actually, per an Accounting Today article that I read today, the same one with the same one with the news about the different e-file issues had the same story, so it was really timely. 69% of respondents to the survey found that there's opportunity for tax strategy. 31% found that they can be fractional CFOs, and 16% found that fractional accounting was an area where they could grow. And so I think those are all great areas to grow in and really beg the question, Jay, like what is advisory? And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, before I tell you my thoughts, I want to know what your thoughts are on
Okay.
advisory. Let's start there.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Let's do that. So when I think of it advisory, right? I draw back a lot on the history that I have, right? When you're providing decision making advice to someone, that is like the basic form of advisory, right? You're giving someone a piece of information that's allowing them to make a decision better. I think of that through where I started into doing advisory work, which was in due diligence. I think about that in financial statement interpretation, right? Of like, this is what this is what's happening in your business. Like, this is advisory, right? I think about this in pricing models, and in some of the stuff that if you're following Jay on TikTok, you will have seen his short form video related to tariffs and how they can impact your retail pricing. Stop. Know that like that type of thing is also advisory. It can be really big and really broad. Those are the ones that I think about. Jay, is that how consistent is that with what you think?
Well, it doesn't really matter what I think because, we talk about advisory, we talk about CAS, client accounting services, cloud accounting services, client
Right.
advisory service. There are thousands of
Thousands.
definitions. So, I mean, from my perspective, advisory is helping clients make decisions.
Right.
And I think if you look at the true definition of it, it's giving clients proactive advice for a fee that helps them achieve their goal. And ultimately, that's what we want to do is help our clients achieve their goal. So
Right.
how do we get there and what do we have to do to help our clients? And there's quite the
Yeah.
journey to it. And I think going back to what you said earlier, 69% opportunity in tax strategy. Well, if you
Yeah.
trust the TikToks of the world, yeah, there's a ton of strategy out there in tax that can be done. Most of it I
Right.
wouldn't listen to, but the thing about advisory is we're all until we do it, we're like, that's scary. I don't want to do it. But ultimately, whether you're delivering a tax return and you're telling your client something or how to do something, or you're doing their bookkeeping and you give advice, and we do that. We are
Mhm.
doing advisory. We're just
Right.
not charging for it. So don't think about that it is scary and you don't know how to do it. Just think
Right.
about what I just said. You're already doing it. And we're going to jump into that through the next 20, 30 minutes, however long we're going to be
Yeah.
on here for. So,
Right. Yeah. And so Jay, if you were to go back over maybe the past month of the different advisory services that you've performed, um, can you give us like a high level summary of what it is that you've done, so people can see how broad those things can be?
yeah, for sure. So, let's start out with, like you said, the tariffs, talking to clients about their pricing. Have they priced their products at the level to maintain the profit margins that they must or are wanting to achieve? And if you haven't reevaluated your pricing based on pending tariffs, you might be losing money. And, well, you're going to lose profit, but you might be losing money. So you have to pay attention to that. In the last month, I've had numerous calls with clients regarding taxes, and we
Yeah.
looked at different ways of saving money, different uh, talked about strategies. So that's another avenue, and that's a great one for those of you that are running tax compliance shops. I mean, why can't you pick out a couple of strategies? And I'm not saying the Augusta rule, and I'm not saying to pay your children. I'm saying true strategies. And not to say that those two rules don't work, they do, but you have to have a specific situation for them. So,
Right.
in addition, talking about cash flow, talking about cutting expenditures, heck, I mean, if if you look at my advice to the TV news, I'm a freaking expert in cost cutting, but but looking at other things, and there's even some advisory that's not work related that I'm doing. It's like, uh,
Yeah.
when it comes to NASCAR and what teams should be doing. I mean, I'm giving advice. I'm not getting paid for that. That's going that old school advisory
Right.
there. But it's all around us, is
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say. And
Right.
it's having those conversations with clients, and it's getting to the point where they know, like, and trust you, that they tell you everything, and then they listen to you and take your advice. And that's ultimately what it's about.
Yeah, or not take your advice, right?
Or
Sometimes part of
not, right?
advisory is, yeah, sometimes part of advisory isn't giving a direct solution. Sometimes part of advisory is giving options
Right.
or pieces of information, scenario building. That's actually one of the things that I've done recently is I helped a client build a modeling scenario for accelerating their cash payments from their customers, and whether or at what level they could afford to provide a discount for that acceleration, right? Like, is it worth it to be able to pay 2% less to be able to get payment 60 days in advance? Like, does that matter? Is that a big deal? Does it help? What's the impact, and how can that affect our future business modeling, right?
For sure.
Um, and so those types of things are examples of very, very specific things, right? And all of the things that Jay mentioned, like, I haven't really done either, right? There, that's the thing about advisory is people with different skill sets can do lots of different things. And so if you have a growing firm with people with a vast majority or a broad background set, right, you can do a lot more with all of that activity, right? Um, One of the things that I do regularly is meet with people to talk through what's happening in their financials. Um, this this part of the year has been challenging for a lot of people in a lot of different spaces, right? And so some of the advice that you might be able to say is like based on these other companies that are similar to yours. So some market participants, like you're overspending here or underspending here, and so you can provide advice on cost cutting or what you would do if you needed to increase or improve cash flow. That's a very easy thing to do. There's also things that you can basically do in Excel. Like I have a client where I provide a cash flow forecast. It's built on a couple different reports that pull out of the system and the current cash balances, right? So I'm getting an AR report, an AP report, building in some when does payroll happen, that kind of thing, and building out a model over the next few months of what's our cash position going to be, how much cash do we need, what do we need to come through if we get one of our customers to pay a little early, like what impact does that have on us? Those types of things are relatively simple models, but they can be really, really impactful because they highlight for your customers, your clients, they highlight what can I afford right now? They highlight how much of my AP should I pay? Should I wait to pay it? Like that kind of thing. You can start to see how those future payments flow out based on current due dates, and then you can make edits to it, right? And you can describe what it looks like if you extend your payment terms by 10 days and decrease your outstanding payment terms by the same, right? Like you can see what that does to your cash flow. So that kind of modeling um, can be extremely valuable because it is super helpful in decision making. But it's just a model, and it's not a thing that necessarily is an end all be all, right? Just an option. Um, and so Jay, like that's a lot of different things that you can do in advisory. And
Well,
so
I can add
when
another one to it as well, and
yeah,
that would be technology advisory.
I was
Helping
surprised in
firms.
that.
Well, yeah, I was saving that one for last.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Helping
right,
firms become more efficient by using the right tools, and not only using the right
right,
tools, but connecting those tools so they can eliminate data and manual entry, and
right, and make your
eliminating
job
all that
easier on the
extra.
back end.
Exactly, exactly, and then
Right,
connecting those apps to AI and all those other fun things.
yeah, right. And so again, what that means, right, is that advisory is different to every single person, and it's also different to every single client because it is based on their needs and based on what they want and the decisions that they need to make. And so because of that, um, it can feel challenging, right? Because it's not a cookie cutter, redo it, execute it over and over and over, the way that maybe 1040 prep is, right? Like it isn't. It's different than compliance in that respect, right? Is that you have a tailored service need for each customer, and so that can be one of the biggest roadblocks is that there's a lot of potential complexity or it's different, it's new, it's a little harder to scale, right? Jay, what other things do you think about when you think about advisory and the challenges of getting started doing it?
Well, I think it's not knowing what you don't know, and
Mm,
uh, honestly, it's the fear of failure, and it's knowing what to charge for it is the other one. And we're not going to
right.
get into pricing today. We'll talk
No.
pricing on another episode because that's a whole
Yeah,
eight to
more than a
24
10-minute
hours in
conversation.
itself. But
Yeah.
most firms look at it and it's like this is a large lift, and they don't know where to start. They don't know how to proceed, and realistically, it's look back at your past because you've already done it to a point. Like I said,
Right.
so
Yeah.
it's actually just going back and seeing, hey, I actually gave advice to this client, and I wonder if it worked. And go back and talk to that client. Just have a conversation. You don't even have to
Yeah.
say that you want to talk about advisory or anything. It's just like just go back and say, hey, last year we talked about you wanted to buy whatever, and what was the result of that? And either they're going to gush on about it, and at some point say, oh yeah, you told me to do that, or something like that. It's the greatest feeling you get as an advisor is seeing the joy in your client's eyes when they're talking about something you helped them achieve, and
Yeah.
it's just amazing.
Yeah, and so if you think about what you need to do to get started, I think Jay summarized it pretty well there, right? Like the first thing that you need to do is ask questions, and the second thing you need to do is listen. So you need to understand where your clients' pain points are, and the things that they're finding challenge in, because those are the areas where you'll be able to provide advice. So understand your clients' needs, and that is where you can really get started is by understanding exactly what your clients need.
Yeah, listen for
Um,
specific keywords that trigger you. Hey,
right,
I need a new mortgage. I want to buy a building. I'm sending a child to college. Thinking
right,
about retirement, thinking about selling, things along those lines. And by hearing that, that should trigger you. Oh, yeah, let's jump in there. And then you listen. And you ask them a
yeah,
question, you listen. Take it all in. And yeah, and we talked about this not this last year, the year before at our retreat. It's like you got to be meeting with your clients because the more you meet with them, the more they are going to trust you, the more they are going to tell you, and
right,
it's just nature in its course right there. So just meet with them, have those conversations, and they're just going to open up and tell you what their desires are, what they're trying to achieve, and ultimately
yeah,
what you want to know is what are their goals, what are they trying to achieve, and what are their perceived obstacles to get there, and just help
right,
them hurdle those obstacles.
yeah, and and sometimes that can be really easy. Sometimes that, and importantly, sometimes that's not from you. So sometimes the best advice that you can give is to find somebody that has a skill set in that area, right? And so it may not necessarily be something that you put directly to your team, but it may be something that you find a consultant or a different support person to be able to give them exactly what they need.
And
Um,
you're not giving that solution, you are giving them value because you
Absolutely,
gave them the resource that delivers that solution.
that's right. Absolutely, and that comes back in a really positive customer experience, which I think is really important. One other thing that obviously is important in getting started in this is understanding that you have a lot. of people around you potentially that can do advice that you've never really thought about. And so, like Jay and I talked about, we have very diverse backgrounds, which means that we can provide very very um, different solutions, right? We can provide advice in lots of different ways. And that's true of any team that you work with. You have had experience with different clients. You have had experience in different industries. And so because of that, you have information that can be valuable because not everybody has had that same experience. And so it is important to remember that the knowledge that you have can be valuable to anyone as you know where where to use it or how to use it, and the knowledge that your team has is the same way. So if you have a team, make sure that you understand the skills that they have and the talents that they may have as well, things that they're excited for. Um, Jay, what else do you think? What else do you think people should do to get started?
Find a client, find a client that you've been working with and you have a great relationship, and just start a conversation. Invite them in for coffee and say, "Hey, want to talk about what your goals are and find out what the goals are." And when you do that, you could actually, what I would recommend you do if you don't already have a client that you're in a advisor relationship, go ahead and do it anyway and give it to them. Say, "Hey, I'm working through this. I know that we've been working together a long time. I value you. I want to help you, and I hope you can help me with this process." And just go through the process and absorb their information, listen to what they're trying to do, and meet with them. Keep learning about them, build their trust in you, and it might not be every time, but you will deliver value nuggets to them, and that's what's
Right.
going to make the difference for them. Is just do that, and do that till you're comfortable doing it to new clients that you don't have a relationship
That's
yet,
right.
because the key is to be able to ask the questions and then just let them talk to you, and you want them to
Right.
feel safe and feel trusted, that you want them to feel that you are trusted. They're just going to tell you, and I can't tell you how well it works. And at one point, I did 3 meetings in one day, all in remote offices, and dang it, if all 3 of them didn't cry. I mean, we were coming up with solutions. I mean, one was going through a divorce, and it was a tax
Mm,
issue, and we were able to figure a lot of things out for them that helped them, and they were just so emotional. But all 3 of them just cried, and it was just an emotional day. And at some point, you really think you feel like you're a therapist.
yeah, you can be,
Yeah,
and you're providing value that way too, right?
yeah, exactly.
Especially especially in some of those situations, right?
Yeah.
So um, so again, I think the most important thing that we've talked about, right? There are three main things, right? Ask questions, listen, and try it. And if you do those 3 things, you're going to set yourself up for success. Um, Jay, do we have other stuff to talk about as it comes to advisory services and what it means to be an advisor, or success stories, or whatever it might be?
Well, I think one thing that we do at High Rock, we have our team that does the advisory is not the same team that does the bookkeeping and other work. So
Yeah,
you want to make sure you're building efficient firms to do that, because if you're doing all the work, you don't have the time to spend having the conversations. So you want to
yeah,
make sure you have efficient workflows in place so that you can take the time and have those conversations. So I think that is equally as important as everything else, is to have those workflows and understand what goes into them. And you want to make these processes repeatable and scalable so that you can deliver the services. And by doing
right,
so, making it profitable, and you know do more and more of them that way. So
right.
I think that's the other side of the advisory is making sure you understand your processes, where your roadblocks are, and make them as efficient as possible.
Right. Absolutely. Well, Jay, I think that's probably a great place to end today.
You got it.
Seems like the right set of information to leave on. Um, get out there, ask those questions, listen to the answers, provide advice. Like that's the way we want you to think about advisory and what we'd love for you to see and try to do. Um, Jay, any final thoughts, or do we have an automation of the week this week?
We do
I know
not.
it was a
It
busy
was a
weekend.
busy weekend, yeah. And this
Yeah.
weekend's going to be even busier. So
Right, yeah. Firing up tomorrow, right?
firing
Thursday?
up at
Tomorrow.
Daytona tomorrow, yeah.
Exciting. That's exciting
Yes,
times. All
especially for
right.
us NASCAR
Well,
fans.
yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. All right. Well, thank you all for hanging out with us today. We definitely want for you to take an opportunity to explore advisory. It's provided obviously Jay and I with a lot of value as individuals because that's what we're here today talking to you because of it, right? So get out there and try it. The world could definitely use more people giving good advice. Thanks for spending time with us, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great rest of the week,
Bye.
everybody.